size. So overgrown weeds that didn't get an autumn preem. And poppies can be a tricky weed, especially in certain conditions. What's the best growth stage? So Dan, would you like to come in here?
Yeah, so thanks, Tom. Yeah, it's a commonly asked question, actually. So it touches on what Jim was just talking about. So phenoxy herbicides generally they're more temperature dependent than some of the other broadleaf weed chemistry that's out there. So you know, you'd suggest that 10 degrees plus would be certainly desirable in terms of application, and as Jim says, you know, after application as well. Having said that, Mecaprop or CMPP, as some people will call it, it will work in slightly cooler conditions, and we do now have a 2,4-D ester formulation. So majority of the phenoxy formulations that we have are amine formulations now, but we have a new product called Depitone Ultra, which is an ester, a low volatile ester formulation, which again will work in more marginal conditions and perhaps cooler conditions. So something else to consider, as you would with any herbicide application, is size of the weed at application, as John touched on as well. I do feel that timings are often sort of compromised when it comes down to, in this instance, broadleaf weed control, because it tends to be the fungicide application that people are concentrating on, focusing on, and everything has to fit in with that. And I do wonder whether, you know, there is perhaps a need going forward also certainly look at splitting fungicide applications away from things like herbicide applications in order to target weeds at the correct growth stages. So it's food for thought, perhaps.
Absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, no. Something else to consider is, especially with phenoxy herbicides, is the growth stage restrictions again, which John touched on. So both MCPA and Mecaprop, they're actually very well tolerated by cereal crops, and easel can be used as mentioned up to growth stage 39. Duplazan currently, which is our straight Mecaprop, you can use that up to growth stage 33, although we have done some work, and we will hopefully be getting an extended label for a later timing with straight Mecaprop. 2,4-D and dicamba that can be found in some of our mixtures, and obviously 2,4-D as a straight in cereals. They tend to have growth stage 31 cutoff. So 4 to 6 leaves, which is pretty common, would be the desirable timing for broadleaf weeds. It's as Jim was saying, you know, it's an ideal growth stage, but something else to consider is the crop competition. So you actually want to hit the target to start with. So, you know, leaving it any longer, then obviously the crop's going to be growing just as well, you'd hope. So you could impact the amount of spray you're getting onto your target weed. Something that we did look at is it's a question that we've had again many times, is control of poppies, as Joanna mentioned. It's where you've got growers applying sulfonylureas earlier in the season to control broadleaf weeds, and among those poppies feature, obviously. And it's not until time marches on and all of a sudden you're faced with a sea of red that's come through the crop, which is not particularly desirable to the farmer or the grower or even the agronomist, but the general public.
Great for the local artist group, in my experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do remember one year coming away from the cereals event at Duxford, and there was an absolute flood of red, which I'm sure didn't go down particularly well, considering where the exit was for the car park. But so we this was obviously due to ALS resistant poppy. So a trial was done a couple of years ago now with Easel, which is our 750 gram MCPA, which, as I said, can be used up to growth stage 39. Amongst there was other herbicide treatments in there as well. This was on ALS susceptible poppy, to mention, because some of the other treatments included more typical sulfonylureas, and within the Easel application, we also included some epoxyconazole just to see if there was any crop effect as well, phyto, by adding that. We actually got really good results from the Easel application, you know, up to sort of 94% control. The crop was at growth stage 37, and the poppies were in flower. So to give you some sort of idea, it suppressed the poppies very well, and the crop obviously carried on growing, and there was no phyto at all. So from the epoxyconazole. So it's yeah, key to look at growth stages.
Thank you very much. Will, just before we move on to, time's rattling on slightly, so but just before we move on to herbicide resistance, we did want to talk about thistles. Jim, I know that you've got some views on controlling thistle. I know that John touched on it earlier, but Jim, I know that you've got some thoughts about thistles.
Well, my only thoughts on thistles are that there's a problem sometimes with very early growth winter crops, that the thistles pop through so late in terms of growth stage and crop cover, they can be difficult to control in with the hormone herbicides. So there is an issue of the phasing of the crop and the phasing of the thistle emergence. But if you can get a good coverage of the top few leaves of thistles with MCPA, you'll get a reasonable control. I don't know if Dan would accept that as a statement.
Yeah, and we've seen it. We've seen it on various trials, both small plot and you know, full scale field trials as well. So
great.